I've yet to meet the person who doesn't love a bargain. Most of us just can't go past a half-price reduction or a really special offer. During the lockdown, the internet has been cashing in on this weakness in people. Sites like Groupon, It's On, and Living Social sites have been offering such really good deals, fantastic reductions. Trouble is, you'll end up buying things you don't really need. The bargain seems just to have that pull on us. Anyway, to our gospel reflection. Peter is again centre stage in this week's gospel passage, but he clearly misunderstands what Jesus had been trying to teach the disciples for the past couple of years. When Jesus tells them that he will have to suffer in order to achieve his goal and triumph in his mission, Peter immediately suggests that Jesus should avoid this trial and pain. He suggests that he and the other apostles can fix it so that Jesus doesn't have to go through the suffering and discomfort. He wants to present a shortcut. He misses the point completely. Great triumph comes only through sweat and tears. Resurrection can only come after death. There's no reduced price here. However, we have to take care in regard to putting this teaching into practice. We must beware of falling into the trap of imagining that this teaching commends the virtue of suffering. At different times in the history of the church, there have been people who have thought that if they sought out and took on to themselves every possible suffering, trial, pain, difficulty, and discomfort, they had the right to think themselves holy and virtuous. There's no indication that Jesus meant this or anything like it. Suffering for the sake of suffering has no virtue. Indeed, it denies the glory of human nature, the very pinnacle of God's creation. The truth of the matter is that trial and suffering are inevitable. They will be part of every mature human life, without exception. We don't have to go looking for it. It'll find us, but it rarely comes in the form we find acceptable. Don't you find that other people's sufferings and trials usually appeal more than your own? Jesus teaches us to accept suffering as a fact and to deal with it, to deal with our trials directly as they come upon us. And here's the glory and the comfort in this teaching. He tells us that every trial has a triumph in it. He reveals to us that within suffering, there's hope. There is for the Christian no such thing as pain or death without the possibility of resurrection. Peter was trying to fix things, to get Jesus a good deal. In the history of the church, there have always been people on the other extreme who have sought to self-inflict suffering. Neither is in touch with the ideal of Jesus. He showed us that we must be ready to suffer when trials come. It does no good to turn our face away. However, we must also be prepared and willing to rise again. There's an innate tendency in humans to try to imagine things, to try to get the best results for ourselves, even if we have to massage reality in doing so. I think that is exactly what Peter was doing. Father Mike told me a gem of a story. He said that he had used it before, but even he had forgotten the punchline. So I'll have a go again, eh? It illustrates just how we tend to want to manage things to our best interests. And even if it's not relevant, it's much too good a story not to tell you. The pastor of a small congregation was being persuaded by a group of energetic missionary disciples to change his allegiance and join them. He listened for a while and then said to them, "Gentlemen, look, I have a proposal that will settle this. I have here a glass of poison. If you will drink this poison and remain alive, I'll join your church. And not only myself, but my entire congregation. If you won't drink the poison, well then, I can only conclude that you are false disciples of the gospel, because you do not trust that the Lord would not allow you to perish. This put the missionary disciples in a bind, so they went off to a corner and put their heads together. And they said, what on earth are we going to do? Finally, after a while, they decided. They came back and approached the pastor and said, tell you what, we've got a plan. You drink the poison and we'll raise you from the dead. If we are to be effective missionary disciples, perhaps we need to ask the Lord to strengthen our trust in his goodness.